Hello and welcome back to Poop Update 2023. If you're new to this channel, I probably just scared you away with that wild gesture, but I'll tell you anyhow that I had one single bag of IV clindamycin in the hospital in January of this year when I got ear surgery. And because I'm a nerdy scientist person, I decided to track the pre-surgery, pre-antibiotic stool testing data and compare that to some stool testing that I did at the 3-month post-op mark. And boy, oh boy, did my microbiome change. Not in a good way for the most part. There were some things that grew and seemed to enjoy the new space that the clindamycin cleared for them, but there were some things that were really wiped out, like my Bifidobacterium, Akkermansia, and Lactobacillus, 3 of the most important keystone species or genuses that we have in the gut. So, being the nerd that I am, I then decided to do a 3-month dietary intervention to see where that would get me. Keeping in mind that there is some evidence that it might take a year for the gut microbiome to recover after antibiotics and restabilize. So some of the numbers that we're seeing in today's video might just be a consequence of time. But, we can doodle on it anyway. We're going to have fun with this video. Anyhow, just take it with a grain of salt. And keep in mind, please, that I'm not basing any of this off of single points in time. I have done a lot of stool testing for this YouTube channel with my prebiotic experiment and various experiments over the last couple years. So the first set of data, the pre-antibiotic data set, is based on 23 16S stool tests from Ombre. That's what I'm using for this video as well. So 23 stool samples over the course of about a year. That's my baseline, and I'm taking the average of that. Then, at the 3-month post-op mark, I did 8 stool samples, all within about a week of each other. And that is, the average of that data is my second time point that I'm talking about. Then for this data set, I got a little bit lazy. I only did 6 Ombre stool tests back to back for you over the course of the week, but I figured that was sufficient enough. So each of these is based off of an average of many data points over time. So I think that at least the trends themselves are fairly valid. So without further ado, let's go to the Google Sheet and we will look at the data. Let me put my head right here. Okay, so first up, we've got the phylum data. So we've got Firmicutes, Bacteroidetes, and Proteobacteria. These are the big 3 phylums that I want to look at here, or phyla. And as you can see, we had, so what we're looking at here, we've got the pre-antibiotic data. So again, that's based on 23 Ombre tests in about the year 2022. Then we have the 8 samples that I did at the post-surgical 3-month post-op time frame. And I looked at the change. We did that in another video. And then the new data, we're looking at the 3-month intervention average, and we're looking at the change between the post-surgical data and the 3-month intervention data. So that's how I have denoted it here. So let's take a look. So in the last 3 months or so, I have had a 12% decrease in Firmicutes, which I would argue are the good guys of the microbiome. And that sounds scary and bad until you look at where I started out. So my starting point before any of this was that Firmicutes made up about 50% of my microbiome. Then after the surgery, they actually grew a bit up to about 56%. And now they've come back down to 49, which means this 12% decrease is just returning back to my normal. So I'm actually not that worried about that personally. Bacteroidetes did have a little bit of a true shift. So they were 42% before the surgery. They went down to 41%. Basically statistical noise. It's practically the same after the surgery. And now they're at 48, almost 49%. So that is a little bit curious to me. Now, the intervention I did was to eat lots of polyphenols. So I was eating more olives than I normally would. I was drinking green tea almost every day, sometimes twice a day. I was eating my dark chocolate, which I normally would do anyway. Eating berries, things like that. So I don't know if this makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if Bacteroidetes are polyphenol consumers necessarily, but I thought that was very curious. I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but I thought it was curious. And very excitingly, my Proteobacteria have been fine the whole time. So my year average for last year was 1.8, which is perfectly fine on this sort of a test. Anything below 4% for these bad guys, I think is fine. Then it went down to 1.4% after the surgery. Okay, cool. I'm pretty pumped about that. And now they're down further to 1.07. So kind of cool. I'll take it for the win. I mean, I didn't have an overgrowth of proteobacteria to begin with, but I'll take it for what I can. All right, let's get into the much bigger data set. I'm going to put my floating head over here, I guess. Where do I want to put myself? I guess over here. Okay, so now we're going to zoom in a little bit further and look at the genuses. And I'm really just going to highlight the ones that change the most, because anything that's down in like the 10-20% range is probably statistical noise. So I'm not going to really worry about those very much, but let's look at the ones that are like 50% change or above. Now, remember what we talked about last time was after the surgery, I had if you look at Bifido, I had a 72.8% decrease in my Bifidobacteria after the single bag of clindamycin. Pretty big. Similarly, I had a 95% decrease in Lactobacillus after that single dose of clindamycin. Huge drop off in my Lactobacilli ecosystem. So those were the two of greatest concern on this page to me. And then interestingly, if we scroll down a little bit, a couple of my butyrate producers actually went up quite a bit. So Butyrovibrio went up about 230%. Coprococcus went down about 60%. Faecalibacterium increased about 50%. And Roseburia increased about 45%. So there were some interesting shifts that happened from the short-chain fatty acid producers. And we had some of the so-called bad guys that shifted a bit. Most notably, this other Enterobacteriaceae family went down about 77%. Streptococcus went down 69%. And Desulfovibrio and Allostipes went down 50 and 68% respectively. So, and my Methanobrevibacter apparently went down to 0 after the surgery across 8 different samples. So that was very fascinating too. Now, coming back up to the top of the spreadsheet, we could see, looking at this F column right next to my head here, we see that Prevotella went up quite a bit in this 3-month experiment that I just did. Now, keep in mind, only Prevotella copri is thought to be really a bad guy in the microbiome. A lot of the other Prevotella are just fine. So I'm not going to be worried about this. I don't think this is a bad thing at all. Actually, a lot of research seems to suggest that Prevotella can be good guys. So that's probably where the increase in Bacteroidetes from the last page came from. But if you look, Prevotella for me started out at 10%, they went up down to 9%, and now they're up at 22%. So that's a pretty big shift. They about doubled since the beginning of this odd little experiment I embarked on. Bacteroides went down a little bit this time. So again, kind of, usually that's the case. Usually one goes up, the other one goes down because these are competitive with one another. But interestingly and very frustratingly, look at this. My Bifido went down further. This is very upsetting to me. So Bifido, I started out, my year-long average last year was 1.29. Then after the surgery, I went down to 0.35. Now I'm at 0.17. So I decreased by another 50%. That is not what I was trying to do. I'm very disappointed in that. So I've got to go back to the drawing board a little bit. Similarly, Lactobacillus started off at about 0.5%, went down to 0.02, which is abysmal. And now I'm even below that. I'm at 0.0083. So that is a decrease of 64% over the last couple of months. Not the direction I was hoping to go. Also, as a side note, I was trying to eat more fermented foods and get like sauerkraut and that sort of stuff in my diet as well. So that is quite surprising to me. Scrolling down to my short-chain fatty acid producers, on the surface, we would be concerned about this and say, hey, Butyrovibrio went down 49%, OMG. But remember, this is the guy that skyrocketed after the surgery, so maybe this is just me returning back to what my normal was. I don't know if I'm intrinsically worried about it, that it decreased by 50% when it over doubled as a consequence of the surgery. So I'm not going to sweat it, but it is interesting to note. Intestinobacter, on the other hand, is having a little party. So Intestinobacter started out quite low for me. It was still fairly low, and it still is low to be sure. But if you look between last year and the surgery, it went up about 25%. Now it went up another 280%. It just about tripled from the last metric. So Intestinobacter for the win. I don't know. It's a butyrate producer, so I'm not gonna cry about that. And pseudobutyrovibrio went down about 35% initially, but now it's doubled. And it looks like it's coming closer to what my normal was, or it might be a little bit over double of what my normal was. So that one also has shifted around. Maybe these two like polyphenols and we just don't know it. Who knew? Meanwhile, ruminococcus and subdoligrel, God, I forget how to pronounce that one. You get the idea. These two both went down by about 50%. So shifting around. Interestingly, my streptococcus came back up a little bit. Again, this could be cause for concern. Panic button. OMG. Oh my OMG. But if you remember, streptococcus went way down, decreased by 69% to begin with. So increasing a little bit after that, I'm probably just returning back to my normal, which is not that big of a deal. And similarly, desulfovibrio looks bad because it came up 40%. You would think Mayday red alert, but it decreased 50% after the antibiotics. So this is just my ecosystem returning closer to normal, if I had to bet. Now let's get into the species level data. I'll move my head bubble down a little bit. Also, I forgot to tell you, ignore the top bar because this is a big spreadsheet that I use for other things, and I just kind of inserted this in here. So ignore that. I didn't mean to confuse you with the dates up there. But let's look at the other numbers. So similarly, this could be cause for concern. My Faecalibacterium prausnitzii went down 35%, OMG. But if you remember, it went up about 50% after the surgery. So this is just me returning to my normal. Akkermansia, I am delighted to say, did come up. It's not where it was. It's not even remotely close to where it was. I started out, the year average last year was 3.6, and it went way crashing down to 0.17, which totally sucks. And now it has doubled at 0.415. Again, I still have a long way to go. I still have about a 90% climb to make, but I'll take it. Any little bit, I'll take it. And we know that Akkermansia does appreciate polyphenols. So this was my intention with that 3 months of drinking the green tea, eating the olives, eating the chocolate. I was intentionally doing that, thinking that it would take care of Akkermansia. And it looks like it did to some degree. Again, it wasn't quite as profound of a shift as I had hoped, but it did work. And interestingly, look at this guy. This is the most profound shift in this entire data set. Roseburia intestinalis went way up. So look, we went from 0.7 to 0.07 back up to 0.7. Now again, if you look at this, you would think, OMG, it went up 861%. That's insane. Your whole gut must be Roseburia intestinalis. But again, if you look at the data points, that's just me returning to my normal. So that's actually not any higher than it was at the beginning of this whole kerfuffle with the antibiotics. So I'm very happy with that. Again, maybe Roseburia likes polyphenols and we just don't know it yet. Who knew, right? Last but not least, we had a couple of minor shifts. So Eubacterium rectale went down again. It went down the first time after the antibiotics, and it went down again a little bit more. So that's a little bit of a bummer. And Bacteroides fragilis, which I highlighted here in the original data set, went up quite a bit after the surgery and the antibiotics, but it did come down about 9% with the polyphenol experiment that I did. So I'll take that for the W. And Bacteroides vulgaris similarly went up a little bit from 11 to 13, which was a 20% difference after the surgery. But now it came back down a little bit lower than before, and that was a 31% decrease. So pretty neat stuff. All right, to pull myself back out of head bubble mode, let's make some sense of this and let's talk about this. So like I said, I went into this knowing full well that it might take a full year to recover my microbiome from the insult of the antibiotics. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, honestly. You want to think that you could just speed up the healing process and get it done quicker, but these things just take time. So I'm not going to be disappointed in any of these results. I mean, I'm a little disappointed that Bifido and Lacto didn't rebound at all. They actually went down, which is a bummer. But I did know going into this that I had to be patient and it was going to take some time and some experimentation. I'm glad that I was able to get Akkermansia up a little bit, although admittedly it wasn't nearly as much as I'd hoped to get. Going up from the abysmal number I was at to just double of that abysmal number wasn't super impressive, but I think that shift did show me that I can nurture Akkermansia and I can keep plugging away at it, which I intend to do. And then we had a lot of bacteria throughout that were just returning to my normal, including some potentially bad ones, including things like Vibrio and strep, but also some of the butyrate producers, Faecalibacterium. We could see some shifts happening that are bringing me back closer to what my ecosystem was prior to the antibiotics. So the game plan at this point, I'll tell you, I think I might give this next one a good 6 months because, again, I don't want there to be a lot of noise in the data because I'm testing it too quickly, repeatedly. So I might wait until the end of the year to do my next sampling and kind of do it closer to the 1-year anniversary, like December, January sort of stuff. I'm going to continue eating polyphenols also because olives are delicious and I kind of forgot how amazing they are. So I'm going to continue eating olives and occasionally having green tea. I'm probably not going to be quite as on top of the green tea as I was, frankly. But I'll probably continue doing a little bit more polyphenol content in my diet. Any excuse to eat dark chocolate, and I'm all for it. So I'm going to continue doing that for sure. But now I think I'm going to pivot a bit to taking some prebiotics that can feed Bifido. So namely, I think I'm going to start on XOS, which is a FODMAP type prebiotic, but it's known for being bifidogenic, which means it almost exclusively feeds Bifido. So I think I'm going to start on some XOS, continue the polyphenols, and I've also started a probiotic more recently. And I think I'm just going to leave it there and let the microbiome kind of marinate for the next 4, 5, if not 6 months. And then I will do another follow-up video and check back in with you guys to let you know what came of it. Last but not least, I'd be a fool if I didn't tell you that this week is the last week of the FODMAP Freedom open enrollment. And oh my gosh, it's going to be so good. You want to get in on this action. If you've been dragging your heels and thinking about it and hemming and hawing, now is the time to act. You have a day and a half from the posting of this video to make a decision. So, as my great-grandmother would have said, she was a pistol, shit or get off the pot, man. I only opened the enrollment for a couple weeks, twice a year, because I want to hold your hands and monitor you and be with the group as you go through the course. I know there are a lot of programs out there, a lot of courses out there that they're always open. You can join whatever, and it's like a whatever thing. My program's not like that. I send you goodie boxes. I send you prokinetics. I do the live Q&As for many hours each week, as does my nutritionist, who's my assistant. We really hold your hands and make sure that you feel supported and heard and nurtured throughout this process. And we're there to help you make the most of this program. So we only have the ability to open it up about twice a year. You have 2 weeks to decide, and then donezo. You got to wait until the next enrollment period. So if you're watching this video live and you've been thinking about it, join us, come to the dark side. We have garlic, we have cookies. It's going to be fun. And I can't wait to see you in those group Q&As. I do mine all afternoon on Friday. Our FODMAP Freedom coach, Stephanie, does hers on other days of the week. So there's something for everybody. But I really hope I get to see you in FODMAP Freedom this fall. If you're watching this video more than a couple days after it posts, don't worry, we're going to open up the enrollment again in February. We do February and August every single year. So you can catch us on the next one. But if you're watching live, you got to make a decision, man. Now's your time. FODMAP Freedom awaits you. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, click the like button, and leave a comment down below with the videos that you would like to see me do next. Doing all of those really helps support the channel and support my efforts in making as many videos as possible for you guys. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.